Today's talk, it's very personal to me, and today I'm going to be talking about mental health. But I'm going to start off with a very personal story. For about 30 years, my career could have been described as a straight through type A successful career, working on 2 continents, having a multitude of senior HR director roles, and ending up with a remit and responsibility for over 40 countries. A truly significant role, and one which I enjoyed tremendously. But about 24 months ago, about 2 years ago, I suddenly realized I was starting to suffer from low mood and anxiety. I use the words low mood in exchange for the word depression for legal reasons, but where I say low mood, you can read depression. I think that in many instances the distinction between the two is more academic than useful. Now, interestingly enough, I have 2 degrees in psychology, so I understood, at least at a theoretical level, what low mood and anxiety looked like. And it was a completely different story to start experiencing it myself. The origins of my low mood and anxiety came not from the workplace, as can often be the case, but actually from my personal and private life. And this was hard for me to reconcile, whereas up until that point, I'd been very successful, really driven, very focused, and all of a sudden I found myself in a position where I knew I was unwell. And fortunately, I had the support of some of my family and a few really good close friends, and I also knew that I needed some professional help. So I went off to see a psychiatrist, and I went to go and see a psychologist as well. So of course the psychiatrists give you medication and the psychologists give you MBT. And so I started a journey, terrified that my workplace would find out that I was unwell. And in fact, what was ironic was the fact that everything in my life was suffering except my work. And the work was the stable anchor that kept me going through what I can imagine were the most difficult times I have and am ever likely to experience. Unfortunately, my workplace did eventually find out, and it led through a protracted number of discussions to me leaving the organization. And this experience really gave me a unique and insightful view on what's taking place in the world of mental health today. One which beforehand, as I said, I could only have understood at a more theoretical level, and being in human resources, understood that it was an important workplace dynamic, and one that the workplace was both aware of and also had mechanisms in place to control and cater for. But it's a completely different thing when you experience it firsthand. And I remember very clearly in one meeting with my boss, with the HR person there, the HR person was an adequate practitioner, and of course they were aware that I was receiving both psychological and psychiatric treatment, but all the HR person could do was offer the occupational health services of the organization. And only with hindsight does that irony strike me, because I think we've landed in a position where organizations care first for themselves as a collective than they do for the individuals that work for them. And when there's competing priorities, they default to caring for the organization and not the individual. And I really think it's time we examine the dynamics in the organization that give rise to this practice. If you look at the World Health Organization, they have done research, of course, and they say that depression and anxiety have a significant impact on the workplace. And it's estimated, by them at least, that the global economy spends $1 trillion a year in lost productivity because of depression and anxiety. So this isn't only just a wellness issue, this is clearly a commercial issue as well. And right now, in the UK, for example, about 13% of all sickness and absent days are attributed to mental health conditions. Even if we assume that the World Health Organization figure of $1 trillion in lost productivity and the stat for the UK of 13% are over-egged, even if you discount them, we, I think, can agree here today that those numbers and any research that you do in this sphere show that this is a significant issue having a significant impact on businesses today. I'm very fortunate. My low mood and anxiety was situationally orientated. So once I fixed the situation and had completed my course of medication and MBT training, I'm pleased to say I'm healthy again. I'm off my medication. I've done with my therapy and I've started a new life. And I feel much better for the experience because it's given me a level of understanding that I would never otherwise have obtained. I think what's really crucial though is that HR people, when talking to the business and the workplace about this issue, usually come at it from a well-being standpoint, which I think is correct. But I think the stats that we've shown here today clearly point at the fact that it's a telling commercial issue. I remember years ago, I was on the board of a medical aid company in South Africa, which has a health system that's different to the UK. And a medical aid company is similar to, for example, a Bupa or another private healthcare company, but not quite the same. And we were taking a look at the finances and the provisions for the next 10 years for the board. And we knew even a decade ago that mental health issues, and specifically depression and anxiety, were going to overtake the more normal physical health issues that were causing lost productivity in the workplace. And I think that if you read the research done by the World Health Organization today, we have already surpassed that point where mental health issues are far more significant and have a far more significant impact on the workplace and productivity than do physical health issues. It's also interesting to note that in 2015, the World Health Organization published 15 sustainability goals. And actually reading these is really important. And for those of you who might remember the talk I gave to the BTN on my trip to India and the trafficking and sexual abuse of human trafficking of women and children, will realize that I refer to the World Health Organization's sustainability goals there. And again, today I do the same. Goal number 3 talks about ensuring that we have healthy lives and that we promote well-being for all at all ages. So already in 2015, the World Health Organization, when they published their 15 sustainability goals, this was goal number 3. So they realized that this also is a critical issue for organizations and indeed society at large. Now, as I said, in my case, the origins of my illness were personal and from my private life. And of course, that can be true for many people. It can be as a result of relationship issues. It can be as a result of financial stress. It can be a result of caring responsibilities. It can be a result of substance abuse, not only of the individual, but perhaps of someone close to them. So there are many elements of an individual's personal life that can give rise to mental health issues. But of course, there are also many, and maybe many more issues in the workplace that can give rise to mental health issues. These, and I'm not going to go through an exhaustive list, but I think it's important we discuss just some examples so that we can counterbalance the personal life examples that I've already given. So the first thing that can give rise to mental health issues in the workplace is if an organization doesn't have well-developed policies and understanding of, in fact, mental health, as well as safety policies. So in other words, if a person is working in an organization where the safety record is poor, that can cause mental health. And if the organization doesn't have well-developed policies on both mental health and safety and a safe working environment, that can contribute to mental health issues. Poor communication throughout the organization, but particularly from management downwards, can also lead to stress, because this leads to a level of uncertainty where individuals become unsure of what to expect next from their organization, and that can also then contribute to mental health issues. Lack of clarity on objectives or competing objectives, or a lack of resource, can also contribute significantly to mental health issues. This is the classic overworked syndrome that increasingly we hear people talking about. I think also for those who are interested in looking at this subject from a slightly different angle, Simon Sinek has also published some really interesting stuff on what I would call the shifting psychological contract, the way the relationship between employees and organizations has changed over time. And as I said earlier on, I think that when it comes to the crunch, and certainly my personal experience, is that when it comes down to choosing between caring for the individual and caring for the organization, and when I say caring for the organization, what I really mean is protecting the organization. The organization, 9 times out of 10, if not more, will default to the position of protecting the organization at the expense of the individual. And in my case, you could literally see the HR professional tick the box saying, told Andrew to seek help from occupational health tech, showing in that one instance a complete lack of empathy, but worse than that somehow, complete lack of understanding about the fact that I'd already been brave enough to disclose to them that I was under psychiatric and psychological treatment. And I think it's time that we really wake up to the fact that within our organizations today, we will have a significant number of people suffering from mental health issues. So, what should we do? Well, it's beyond the scope of today's talk, perhaps, to give you an A to Z guidebook on how to solve this particular issue. And it is particularly complex to solve. But I think there are a few things that organizations should be doing that I think will help. And the very first, in my mind, is to educate line managers, and in fact all employees, about the importance of mental health. I think we've come to a position today where in most cases, in my experience anyway, organizations have outsourced the mental health care of their employees. And what this means is if an employee needs support in the area of mental health, then that is provided by an external body. What then that means is the line manager washes his or her hands of the issue, is confident that the staff member is receiving whatever treatment occupational health is providing, and work continues as normal. And I really don't think this is the way to ensure that people who are suffering from mental health feel engaged in the workplace and feel safe in the workplace and feel, if they're absent, that they are able to return to the workplace. So I think this education of line managers, and where needed, and in my example, one could argue that that's the case, HR professionals as well. We really need to understand that whilst an outsourced provider may be a useful element of our toolkit, we need to show more awareness and more education and more understanding of how mental health issues may arise in the workplace, who might be suffering from them, and how we should respond in the instance when we realize. This would also include ensuring, for example, that the organization has appropriate policies in place, and that if you do outsource your service, that your outsourced provider is truly able to provide the support to employees who need it. But ultimately, I think this is about being supportive. If organizations are looking to their employees to be engaged with their mission and purpose, and if they're looking for discretionary innovation from their employees, then I think we also have to realize that employees in turn want to understand that their organization is truly supportive of them, no matter what phase they're going through in their lives. And although it's likely that this talk gets published by the BTN in what we call Mental Health Week, for me, I think these mental health weeks or diversity weeks or gay pride weeks or pink children weeks or purple dog weeks or whatever special focus that we have has both a light and a dark side, has both a positive and a negative to them. Because whilst this might be mental health week, and so therefore we might be focusing on mental health, what happens then is the next week we focus on something else. And this can't be a flavor of the day. If it's $1 trillion in lost productivity globally, and if it's 13% of all absences in the UK are attributed to mental health, then this is something I think we really need to wake up to in an organization. This affects the bottom line. And if we say in our annual report that we care for our human resources, who are our most important asset, and if we expect from that asset discretionary innovation and engagement, then it's time that we showed, not just in a week, but in every week, that we truly care. And for those employees who are perhaps at one or other stage of their lives more in need, that we're able to step forwards and to meet that need for them. So I hope you found that was interesting. For me, the journey through my own ill health and then now my health has been one that's been both humbling and very interesting. I think it's given me some unique perspectives and insights, and I hope that at least this talk prompts some debate and thought amongst you and your colleagues. Thank you very much. Right, hi everybody, it's Andrew and I'm thrilled to be back talking to you again today. Now, for those of you who've seen my previous articles or videos on the BTN, you'll have known that I always choose subject matters that I feel really passionate about and that I think are truly important both to the HR profession but also to organizations and more broadly society as a whole.